Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So today we're going to be studying from Surah 29, verse 10, uh, all the way to 38, God willing. So let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Surah 29, verse 10. Fair weather friends. Among the people there are those who say we believe in God, but as soon as they suffer any hardship because of God, they equate the people's persecution with God's retribution. But if blessings from your Lord come your way, they say, we were with you. Is God not fully aware of the people's innermost thoughts? God will most certainly distinguish those who believe, and he will most certainly expose the hypocrites. Those who disbelieved said to those who believed, if you follow our way, we will be responsible for your sins. Not true. They cannot bear any of their sins. They are liars. In fact, they will carry their own sins in addition to loads of other people's sins for which they were responsible. Most certainly, they will be asked on the day of resurrection about their false claims. SubhanAllah. So these verses are talking about fair weather friends. There are people described as a certain kind of people that will be with you, when the times are good. And when there's, any kind of hardship, you know, uh, they will part company with you. And God basically tells us that, hard times serve to expose these types of hypocrites. So when there is any sort of persecution during this time because of God, these people equate it to God's retribution, you know, and it is something that you will see. Uh, I mean, it's hard not to notice these types of situations, and people forget that this when these things happen, in the cause of God, this is actually giving you a special status in the hereafter when you're being persecuted. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong and you're being punished by God, but we see that people use that, and they try to discourage, and basically try to put down the believers in front of others, and they belittle them, and they basically expose themselves at the time because they do not believe at that time that God is running everything, and that this is happening. It's more of a good thing rather than a bad thing, and obviously when the times are good, obviously believe whether you're a disbeliever or a believer, I mean, whether you're a believer or a hypocrite, you'll do what you're doing because it's easy. Anybody wants to be a part of you when you're sharing in the good times. Like if you're doing something and everybody's praising you, they're like, yeah, yeah, this is great. We're part of this, and they want to get the credit and everything. And then when these things happen, then they basically will distance themselves and everything. So um like this is exactly what the verse is saying, but if blessings from your Lord come your way, they say, we were with you, and so uh so God basically tells us in verse 11 that he will most certainly distinguish those who believe, and he will most certainly expose the hypocrites, And I mean, this is a Quranic fact. There are hypocrites. Hypocrites sit among the believers. They talk like believers. They say the same thing. They pray like them. But the difference is that their belief is not there. The conviction uh, of believing in the truth is not there. They're not solid from within. It's all lip service, and a lot of times people get confused by that. And they're like, why would you think that way, because the person will praise like us and think, and goes to the same mosque probably or whatever, and they have the same belief as us. But obviously, I mean, God is telling us about something here that needs to be thought about. I mean, there are hypocrites that are the worst, and they're going to the worst pit of hell, and this is because of this reason. And if you're not able to distinguish that, you're actually going to be hurting your soul by keeping a blind eye to what God is telling you in the Quran. And we should never do that, for our own good. And they also tell they actually are habitual liars too, because they tell the believers that if you follow our way, we will be responsible for your sins. So if they're they will they want you to give away your consciousness, your conscience, for them. So it's like this thing where you just follow along with us, and we will be responsible. It's like people have this notion of a community, and we're like, let's just follow along with everything we're doing, and you'll be fine. Because to them, that um, is all that is really important, is to work as a group and be together and be quote unquote united, and then we'll be fine. But the truth is, obviously, God says they're the liars, and they will be responsible for not only their sins, but the sins of the loads of people that they will mislead. But then obviously people who follow them, they will also be held accountable for their sins. They will not be taking it away from them. Like, for example, if someone tells me to steal and I go ahead and steal, yeah, that person is responsible for misguiding me to do that. But then at the same time, I will be responsible too for listening to that person, and I'll pay for my wrong decisions as well. So, but obviously these people will tell them that, don't worry about it. You're with us. As long as you're with us, you're doing what we're doing, you're gonna be fine, and everything's gonna work out. And but these people are obviously liars. Uh, Noah, verse 14. We sent Noah to his people, and he stayed with them 1,000 years less 50. Subsequently, they incurred the flood because of their transgressions. We saved him and those who accompanied him in the ark, and we set it up as a lesson for all the people. SubhanAllah. So Noah's example is very important, and God has put that as an example for us with Noah's family. I mean, he lived for 950 years. It says 1,000 less 50. So if you look at the footnote for this verse, it says, since the Quran's miracle is mathematical, the numbers especially constitute an important part of the 19-based code. Thus, the numbers mentioned in the Quran add up to be 162,146, or 19 times 8,534. See Appendix 1 for the details. So we know that based on Appendix 1, the numbers that are mentioned in the Quran also add up to be a multiple of 19. So the Quran mentions 30 different numbers, and if you sum them up, you get this big number, which is a multiple of 19. So obviously the Quran could say 950 years, but instead it says 1,000 less 50. So if you add 1,050, that's 1,050, right? So obviously, if it was 950, then it would be less than that. It would be 1,000 numbers less. So then the total would be, instead of 162,000, um, instead of 162, 146, it would be 100 less. It would be 1,600 1,000. It would be 162 1,046 instead of 146, right? And that would not be a multiple of 19. But subhanAllah, these numbers are set in this place that way to teach us that there's the deliberate mathematical pattern they're set by God. And but it's amazing, he stayed for that long with his people, and he was extremely steadfast in preaching to the people, and persistent, and people didn't listen to him, and they got fed up of him to the point that they would just do whatever they could to ignore him, and and his wife and his son were among those that were doomed. But God saved those who accompanied him in the ark and set it up as a lesson for all the people. So, and we know from the messenger of the covenant's explanation too that he said that his example is pretty much the same. Any messenger, is, I mean, it's very symbolic, uh, in this sense. So people who would hold fast to the message, just like the people who held fast to the message of God with Noah, they they were saved. And with the messenger of the covenant too, he said it's the same. So if his people didn't listen to him, whether they're his family, his son, his wife, whatever, you could be the closest person to the messenger of God, but obviously you have to obey the messenger and you have to follow and believe in order to be saved. And we see that people who are not doing that, are going to get annihilated. Obviously, they're not going to get annihilated in a flood, but they're individually going to be targeted and annihilated as per God's system. Abraham, verse 16. Abraham said to his people, "You shall worship God and reverence him. This is better for you if you only knew. What you worship instead of God are powerless idols. You have invented a lie." God, the only source of provisions. The idols you worship beside God do not possess any provisions for you. Therefore, you shall seek provisions only from God. You shall worship him alone and be appreciative of him. To him is your ultimate return. If you disbelieve, generations before you have also disbelieved. The sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message. So Abraham, said the same thing to his people, to worship God alone, and they were obviously following idols that did not benefit them or control provisions for them, and we see that as a common occurrence now. People have gods of different kinds, and especially they have gods of money, for example. They're powerless beings, and they worship them, and they think that they give them money. Also, your boss could be your god too. If you think that your boss is the one who hires and fires and controls your provisions, then you idolize your boss. Think that he controls your provisions. I mean, that is wrong. God is the only one he's the president of the universes, right? And he's the only true king, so he controls everything. And this sincere, solid conviction has to be there. It's not just, shouldn't be just lip service. If we have a tiny bit of doubt about that. You have to eliminate that in order to be saved, because this is the basis of your belief. And it says the sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message. So the function of a messenger, it's like, I mean, it's stating the obvious, the sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message. The messenger doesn't come to mislead people or confuse people or trick people, His function is to deliver the message, and all we have to do is to follow it, you know. And but we see that people get into these traps by Satan, where they say, well, this is messenger's personal opinion, and this is his message, and then obviously, they mislead themselves. Um, but we know from the Quran that the messenger only comes to preach the message when it comes to the religious guidance. They give the teachings to people. That's their job. So we have to follow them. We cannot say, well, yeah, he's the messenger, but I'm not going to follow him because he's just a human being. It doesn't work that way. If God sends a messenger, then he's just a messenger. He has a message from God, and you just follow it if you want to be saved, if you truly believe it. Study the origin of life, verse 19. Have they not seen how God initiates the creation, then repeats it? This is easy for God to do. Say, roam the earth and find out the origin of life. For God will thus initiate the creation and the hereafter. God is omnipotent. And the footnote says 29:19-20. We learn from the Quran that evolution is a divinely guided process. See Appendix 31 for the details. And if you look at Appendix 31, actually, it is quite interesting. I mean, you will not find any religious scripture, like, I haven't come across anything where they recognize evolution as a divinely controlled process. There's people, either evolutionists or there's people that are entirely creationists, but they don't want to acknowledge the fact that, most of them anyways that I've come across, that want to acknowledge that evolution is a divinely guided process, that God controls evolution, and it exists within species, of the same kind. Like, there's evolution within the species of oranges, for example, but an orange cannot evolve into an apple. That's not how it works. And we can see for millions of years, an orange just stays an orange. You can, uh, and there's science behind it. This has never been proven through Darwin or anything. So it's pretty interesting, and it says that, I mean, when people talk about, for example, it's quite interesting. I like to read it. It's not very long, but it says that we learn from the Quran that evolution is a divinely designed fact. From God says in the Quran 21:30 and 24:45, from water we initiated all living things. And then also we see in 32:27 it says he started the creation of man from mud. So humans are not descendants of monkeys, we know from the Quran. Uh, Contrary to what people are being taught. Um, I'm creating the human being from aged clay. It's 1528. So man was created from aged mud, not monkeys. Evolution is possibly only is possible. Sorry, evolution is possible only within a given species. For example, the navel orange evolved from seeded oranges, not from apples. The laws of probability preclude the possibility of haphazard evolution between species. A fish cannot evolve into a bird. A monkey cannot evolve into a human. Probability laws preclude Darwin's evolution. In this computer age, we have mathematical laws that tell us whether a certain event is probable or not. If we throw 5 numbered cubes up in the air and let them fall into a guided straight line, the probability laws tell us that the number of possible combinations we get is 120, right? Thus, the probability of obtaining any combination is 1 in 120, or 1 over 120 or 0.0086. This probability of obtaining any combination is 1 in 120. Oh, sorry. This probability diminishes very fast when we increase the number of cubes. So, right, the more the cubes, the less the probability. And the probability of getting any combination, so if we increase them by 1, the number of combination becomes 720. And so it becomes even less, 0.0014. Mathematicians who are very exacting scientists have agreed that the probability diminishes to 0, quote unquote, when we increase the number of cubes to 84. So if we work with 84 cubes, the probability diminishes to, this is like a whole list of zeros, pretty much 0, you know, and it's like 20 zeros or more, yeah, 30 or so. Okay, so Darwin's so it's 0, whatever, like 30 zeros, and then 209. Darwin's famous statement that life began as a simple cell is laughable. As recently as 50 years ago, Wells Huxley and Wells wrote in their classic textbook that nothing can be seen inside the nucleus but clear fluid. We know that the cell is an extremely complex unit with billions of nucleotides in the gene material inside the nucleus and millions of biochemical reactions. The probability laws tell us that the probability of a haphazard creation of the exacting sequences of nucleotides into DNA is 0, many times over. We're not talking about 84 nucleotides. We are talking about billions of nucleotides that must be arranged in a specific sequence. Some evolutionists have stated that the human gene and the monkey's genes are 90% similar. However, even if they were similar by 99%, we're still talking about 3 billion nucleotides that must be haphazardly rearranged to change a monkey into a human. Okay, I mean, if they're just off by like a couple of genes, you'll see weird characteristics, like really distorted things that are become meaningless. But obviously, this is impossible. So the probability precludes that this is an utter impossibility. The human gene contains 30, sorry, 3, yeah, 30 billion, yeah, no, yeah, 30 trillion nucleotides. 1% of that is 3 billion. Okay, a fitting quote here is that of Professor Edwin Conklin. He stated, "The probability of life originating from accident is comparable to the probability of an unabridged dictionary resulting from an explosion in a printing factory." Okay, so this is pretty interesting. It's like the explosion in a printing factory turning into a dictionary. It's never going to happen. So I just wanted to quickly go through that. And so going back to the verses that we were reading, okay. So verse 21 says, "He condemns to retribution whomever he wills and showers his mercy upon whomever he wills. Ultimately, to him you will be turned over. None of you can escape from these facts, on earth or in the heaven, and you have none beside God as Lord and Master. Those who disbelieve in God's revelations and needing him have despaired from my mercy. They have incurred a painful retribution." So God tells us, first of all, that we have to study the origin of life. And we just went through some parts of that, and you can see how amazing that is. And basically, So it says, "For God will thus initiate the creation in the hereafter." So this is how, I mean, we see the awesome power of God, to make all of this, all these supernumerical combinations work for for us to create, who we are and how we can function, uh, or to build anything of meaning, in this world, as human, as any kind of creatures. Uh, so, knowing that power of God, obviously God will thus initiate the creation, and so these people that um, are disbelieving, I mean, they are obviously despairing from God's mercy, and they disbelieve in God's revelations and God's omnipotence, and so for people to think that, someone who can create all of this stuff, will not be able to recreate it, it's doubting God's omnipotence, and obviously, that's disbelief. So these people are having incurred a painful retribution, meaning they're not going to make it for sure. So we must truly believe that, God will resurrect us, and all of these are scientific facts that are proven by, Quran's mathematical miracles. So we should not have even a shadow of doubt about this. Back to Abraham, verse 24. The only response from his people was their saying, "Kill him or burn him." But God saved him from the fire. This should provide lessons for people who believe. SubhanAllah. So this is an everlasting lesson, an example that God has put in place, which should be true for any believer, not just Abraham. If you're ever put in a situation where somebody's trying to scheme against you and plot against you and hurt you, if your belief is solid in God, and you're righteous like Abraham, then God will save you. And and that fire became just the way that fire became safe for Abraham. you know when they try to put your life in jeopardy, God will make it better for you. God will make it even better for you. Like when they put Abraham in the fire, I mean, he was in a area where it's already hot. It's like, he was living in a relatively hot climate, right? And then they put him in the fire, and then the fire becomes like, it's like somebody put you in an air conditioner, right? So this is a very symbolic example of how, this will happen. I mean, if you're a believer, and when they say, life throws lemons at you, you make lemonade. Well, that happens to be true for any believer. God makes it lemonade for the believers. you know and when somebody tries to throw lemons at you. So, I mean, and that's not even a good example, I think, but God obviously will save you and turn it in your favor, whatever trouble they try to put you through, and their schemes will backfire against them. So obviously, when they saw that, many people would have believed with Abraham, and so obviously with it, it turned out to be in his favor all the way. So these are everlasting examples for us to learn from. Obviously, if this can't happen to you, I mean, this is meaningless, right? But it's in the Quran for us to learn from, that if you do that, you don't have to worry about anybody, doing any kind of scheming or plotting of any sort. God will look after you. The angels will be there to look after you. Somebody sets a trap for you, the angels will divert you from it, protect you. I mean, you know, so you have nothing to worry about whatsoever. All you have to do is maintain your righteousness, and God will look after you. Social pressure, a profound disaster. Um, okay. He said, "You worship beside God powerless idols due to peer pressure, just to preserve some friendship among you in this worldly life. But then on the day of resurrection, you will disown one another and curse one another. Your destiny is hell, wherein you cannot help one another." Lot believed with him and said, "I am immigrating to my Lord. He is the Almighty, the most wise. We granted him Isaac and Jacob, and we assigned to his descendants prophethood and scriptures. We endowed him with his due recompense in this life and the hereafter. After in hereafter, he will surely be with the righteous. So it says, we endowed him with his due recompense in this life and the hereafter. He will surely be with the righteous. Lot said to his people, "You commit such an abomination. No one in the world has ever done it before. You practice sex with the men. You commit highway robbery, and you allow all kinds of vice in your society." The only response from his people was to say, "Bring to us God's retribution if you are truthful." He said, "My Lord, grant me victory over these wicked people." Angels visit Abraham and Lot. When our messengers went to Abraham with good news about Isaac's birth, they also said, "We are not on our way to annihilate the people of that town, Sodom, for its people have been wicked." He said, "But Lot is living there." They said, "We are fully aware of everyone who lives in it. We will of course save him and his family, except his wife. She is doomed." When our messengers arrived at Lot's place, they were mistreated, and he was embarrassed by their presence. But they said, "Have no fear and do not worry. We will save you and your family, except your wife. She's doomed. We will pour upon the people of this town a disaster from the sky as a consequence of their wickedness." We left standing some of their ruins to serve as a profound lesson for people who understand. So, first of all, in verse 25, we're being told that social pressure is a profound disaster, and this is something that is so common, uh, that is still, being submitted and reading these verses, it's still something that uh, people have a hard time grasping. Obviously, like any other fact in the Quran, if you aren't sincere. But it's the fact that people will worship parlous idols due to peer pressure and to preserve some friendship among them in this worldly life. I mean, this thing that people confuse with unity of the believers. You know, uh, it's no longer unity of the believers when you're not believing in God and not being united in God. It just becomes acceptance and preserve worldly friendship, where you don't want to offend certain people and you just want to be their friends because you don't want to offend them. If you offend them, then they will not be your friend. So you're trying to preserve some kind of worldly relationship with these people, right? And there is this like sense of community, and whatever brotherhood and all that, um, but what happens on the day of resurrection? If you are among the group of people that you tolerated, and basically kind of allied with people in a way where they were doing all of these things, first of all, they will rub off on you and you become like them. So that's one thing. And then second thing is, God says that even if you try to maintain this kind of friendship, what will happen in the hereafter, they will not be your friends anyways, because everyone in hell will disown one another. You will be in hell, they will be in hell, God forbid, and you will disown one another and curse one another. So there's not going to be any community type thing where we're family, and okay, well, now we're together and we're still gonna be family because you listen to us and stuff. On the hereafter, everybody's just gonna curse one another, and that's the reality of it. uh, so it is, and so this is interesting. It's called a profound disaster because you can see the scale is massive. uh, and this happens at such a big scale. Even it doesn't matter if you call yourself a submitter or Christian or whatever. It's what you're doing is what counts, right? So if you're doing this and you call yourself a submitter, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're still falling in this category, in this trap. So we should not be like that. And social pressure should never come in the way of you deciding what the truth is, and deciding the right course of action. Um, so then we're told about the story of Lot, obviously, who believed with Abraham, and then God made him a messenger also, who lived in this town nearby to Abraham at the time. So his example obviously is something that people should learn from. Obviously, especially nowadays when homosexuality is become such a uh, thing where people try to be politically correct, and they don't want to offend people who are homosexuals in that way, and they try to be inclusive, and but these things are obviously abominations, mm, of the devil. So practicing sex with men is what the people of Lot were doing. It's just clearly mentioned here, obviously, and there's this is it says you commit such an abomination, no one in the world has ever done it before. So these were the first people who practiced, who introduced homosexuality into the world as a lifestyle. And we know, like, it still has, hasn't stopped. So they were the ones who started it, and God set it up from the get-go, a lesson from the first community. So you can think about it, that even though they were the first ones who did it, and God annihilated them in such a way that, and then even left their ruins, that you can still go to this place, uh, and you can see that, you'll do research, and you'll see there's still stones that are there, archaeologists have found. But anybody can go there, and if you do enough digging and stuff, you'll come across them yourselves. There's tons of videos on YouTube where people have gone to these places, like, as like, religious excursions and stuff like that, and then people have found these things, and there's archaeological evidence full of remains of these people. You can see that they were annihilated. There's scientific evidence that we have, that, and God has left it so, just so people can learn from it. And but we can still see that in today's society, like, this is still encouraged, and it's worse now because it's being taught in schools. Children are being told to respect and acknowledge and recognize these as legitimate relationships, which is horrible. So I think what really ends up is that, we have to teach our generation, we have to teach our kids, obviously, from the Quran, that, this is horrible, and they have to be able to survive in this type of society where, you will be reprimanded if you state your beliefs, but you can say, as part of your religion, that, this is, I don't support this, this is condemned by God in my religion, and this is my right to believe that way, and you can proclaim it. um, but obviously, if it comes to that, obviously we don't uh, obviously go around and, telling all these people that they're doing wrong, just as we don't go and tell every idol worshiper that what they're doing is wrong, right? But when somebody comes to you, and they're advocating idol worship or something like that, then you tell them that, hey, this is wrong. You don't believe that's the same with that. So with homosexuals too, if somebody's a homosexual and they come and start telling you about their lifestyle and this and that, I mean, you're supposed to not tolerate it, or join them in being, as an encouraging factor. You should discourage them from this sort of behavior and let them know that this is not normal, and you should try to talk them out of it. You don't have to obviously shun them right away, because obviously if you would, you wouldn't be able to have a communication where you can talk them out of anything if you just shun them. But when you talk to them, you do talk to them at a level where you're trying to help the person, so they listen to you, that what you're saying is logical and making sense for you. So you should try to help them rather than, try to go along with them and stuff like that, with the fear that, something will happen to you. I mean, obviously, if you're righteous like Abraham, God will look after you. I mean, obviously, these people try to put him in the fire, but what happened? God saved him, right? So, we shouldn't worry about these types of things, obviously, Satan will try to put fear in you in these situations where, you don't want to be, put in a position where, you're gonna be, like cast out or anything like that. But we have to stand with God, and if a situation ever happens where, we have to state our beliefs, we state our beliefs and let them know that this is wrong and that you don't support it, and they can call you homophobe or all these names that they have made, to call people who don't support it, obviously. But obviously we don't that doesn't discourage us from following God's laws. And but and other thing is, we can see from this example is that God knew that Lot was living there and his wife was there. So this woman was very close to a messenger of God. But just like Noah's wife, I mean, and his son, Lot's wife was a disbeliever. She was doing with these, annihilated with these people because she betrayed him. And it's just so also Noah's wife betrayed Noah. And so these people were annihilated even though they were related to him. And people who stayed with God, I mean, God saves them, So, and so especially when it comes to homosexuality too, when it says, beware of a retribution that will not be limited to the evildoers among you, it talks about a community that tolerates homosexuality may be hit by an earthquake. And, California is hit by earthquakes all the time. And so a lot of other communities that tolerate homosexuality, but we should know that we don't become like enablers in this kind of a society, where people do these types of things. It's very easy to get sucked into that, so we should ask God to always guide us in a way where we stand with God whenever it comes to it, and do always do the right thing, God willing. So with this, I'd like to end, and if you guys have any comments or questions, please go ahead. Thank you.
Masha Allah. Thank you, Salãmun. Great Quran
Thank you,
study.
Masha Allah.
Praise God.
Masha Allah, Salman.
Thank you, Masha Allah.
Yeah, mashallah, very good job. Mashallah.
Thanks.
I think you made a good point about how to um, not become enablers, and that we give that would be a moment to proclaim where we stand at, right? Like if like how people are talking about, because chances are in these big cities, you will encounter at work homosexuality, and here and there are people, being more and more tolerant about it, to the point that um, our prime minister goes and be part of their parade on the Pride Day. It has become a pride. From abomination to pride, it has traveled its way. That's really dangerous. So there should be some people who can. Obviously, we cannot take away human rights to forever. To exercise their free will, but we can. Any chance we get, we say, God. Like at my work, I have worked most of my life in social work environment, and that's where you will find a lot of support. And I spoke with one of my colleague about it, and she's like a big activist. And she has children, and is not a homosexual, but she would go and support them on their parades, take her kids, little 3-4 years
Oh my God.
old, to these parades to teach them, you know, um, that their rights and this and that. And I gave her Quran. She was listening to everything, and then a few days later, she returned the Quran to me. She said, "What? How could homosexuality be condemned, and what kind of God would not like such loving people, and it's all about love and this and that. So, and I said, she said, I don't like this part of the religion, and every religion does that. And said, well, I'm not saying that. God says that. God knows best. Anyway, so I said my piece, and I'm like, if God says whatever that is, we have to hear and obey. Apparently, her spouse was a Muslim, and she was from another religion, but knew quite a bit about Islam. So, mashallah, that's a good point, to find moments where we can, forbid the evil and advocate righteousness, inshallah. That's it.
Yeah.
Mashallah, Sister Najat. And uh, in regards to the same topic, I find that I know of a mom, and she's got like awesome mom, and she's got like 5 children. So she's always supporting gay pride within the city and things like that. And so she would say it publicly. And then one day she says, I have 5 children. You never know if one of them is going to be. So it seems like she's supporting them ahead of time. And when I think Rashad mentioned, it's like opening the door to Satan. So she's taking preemptive step to support the movement, because she says of the 5 children she has, which they're like 15 and down, that maybe one of them might become that way. And I think that's just opening the door to Satan.
Wow. It's like, okay, show when children are young, teach them about alcohol and drugs. Maybe one of them can choose to do that. How about that? It's like, introduction to evil. Let me do it at the young age, It's a normal thing to do. Wow, that's bad. Yeah, I know. And don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying like I didn't do that before during my days of ignorance, because I was in such fields and absolutely brainwashed, and and gosh, so many things I had to change my thinking. And but when God says this is what it is and this is what it is, there is no ifs and buts. And some people would say, oh, Quran talks about male homosexuality but not female. So yeah, this is,
Yeah.
submission is all about, yes, yes sir, we hear and we obey. Mashallah.
Yeah, I mean, now they're also teaching children in school, they have books where, there's they show things like, princess kissing a prince instead of kissing a princess, things like that. They're actually uh, always constantly trying to, put that in the curriculum from the very beginning to brainwash the children. Um, so you don't even have to take them to parades and things like that to teach them. I mean, they're teaching them right in their schools, in public schools, and also obviously maybe a lot of private schools
Yeah,
as well.
there are books in the school libraries about all kinds of families, that
Right.
two moms, and they also not just mainstream culture. They will show two Indian moms with the
Mm-hmm.
child, or they like
Mm-hmm.
it's going across cultures, so it
Mm-hmm.
should be so normalized. Then
Mm-hmm.
anybody is encouraged. If you are
Mm-hmm.
this, you can even have. And it goes when there are children from these families. Obviously those children are not their one of them is not part of the child, at least. So they're saying, you can have, because the child can be adopted, or child can be um, have surrogate mom, or you can have a You can all kinds of other options coming along with it, with the family system, you know. So normalizing for them. See, this society has on a very large scale and still struggling to make it more, because when your prime ministers go and be part of that and bear the flag and dance with them and all that, I mean, then what society is left which is not tolerating it. Like these countries, I mean, human rights is one thing, of course. They want to do something, they can do it, but do not facilitate it. Anyway, it's a very issue quite gone out of hands now.
I remember when Sherry was about 4, I went to the school and a purple Barney caught my eye. So I didn't watch Barneys back then. I still didn't. And then someone mentioned to me the purple Barney was supposed to be teaching children, and these were kindergartners teaching children about all the different kinds of people in the world, making it very normal. And it really makes you wonder. It's like, what are they teaching your kids in school?
Yeah, Isha's two moms. That I remember now the name of the book, one of the books. Isha's two moms. I mean, it talk about other kids getting confused. What the heck? This is abomination being taught. But you cannot teach name of God. Don't even say that word. I mean, at schools.
In regards to verse 29, I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. It says, you practice sex with men, you commit highway robbery. The part where it says you commit highway robbery, that's theft. Normally in this town, we consider that theft. Is that what it's talking about?
No, there is still highway robbery as well. Like, highways were not, say, people would travel, caravans and all that, and people would rob goods and on a larger scale, like, coming on horses and taking away things.
Okay, so apart from them practicing homosexuality, they were also thieves. Is that what it's saying? That's what it's saying, isn't it?
No, in that society, sorry, I keep on answering you without asking others. I'm just saying that these were other problems in that society too, but God pointed out only that which had never been done before was this issue, homosexuality. Sorry, if somebody wants to say
Masha Allah.
differently. Yeah.
Salãmun Alaykum.
Assalamu
Let me pull up the verse. I also think this is all kind of vice in the society. You allow all kind of vice in the society, so that's a big problem. Allowing and vice, all kind of vice. So you can imagine, beating, cheating, stealing, robbing, bad behavior, killing, anything you can possibly think of vice. And not only that, they allow it. Look at the society. You live in a country, there's a laws prohibit bad behavior. I mean, like in any American and Western or any country you go, if you steal, you go to jail. If you lie, it's okay. If you certain things, if your characteristics, it's no big deal. But if you are doing something criminally or they're against the law, these are prohibited. But in this society, as we can read, is they allow it. So this was a country or a place where you can do whatever you want. There's no law and order. Nothing is going on, and they're allowing. It got to that point that they start doing the homosexual things, and there was no question asked. I think that's my understanding is, and we can see our society, people are doing that, and it's allowed. It's allowed in the countries, and many countries are allowing gay marriage. They're issuing certificate. So you know, so it's become normal. And when you teach your children from the beginning something, it becomes normal. They grow up, they're gonna see uh, all this stuff going on. It will not be even bad because we are human being. We in a society we grow up, we take that as a normal. This is a normal thing, and we don't even look at it and we say that, oh, this is wrong or this is right, because this is what we saw, and this is what right is. Mashallah. And you can also see that people come from different cultures because we travel. One country will be something, and people travel to another country. People will say, "Oh, really? They do it here?" Somebody who was born in like very strict Muslim country and never seen alcohol, this person will come to a country where alcohol bars are open everywhere. Will be a shock of their life. They say it's allowed here. It's not even allowed in my country. So so back to the question. I mean, I think this society was open to anything. Thank you.
So the next question, the actual question part of it was that a question or did I misunderstand?
No, Adam was just making a point, I think.
Yeah. I was just
Oh,
explaining
okay,
because
okay,
she was
that's
saying that
okay. Yeah, that's
for
what I
the highway
thought. Yeah.
robbery. So I mean, this was society that was allowing everything. You can name it. There's no law and order. I think that's what it means. I guess.
Well, it means to me like, I mean, these people were this kind of sin was so common, everybody was doing it. It was so common that obviously, like for example, you could if you go to certain countries, for example, you can see, for example, like bribery is such a common thing, right? Everybody does it. It's acceptable in the society, right? Because everybody's so accustomed to doing it, it becomes part of their lifestyle. And, you know, so we see so many things like that, right? So these people were the ones who started it in the first place, and then it became the way of their life, you know, that they even had wives too, and they would forsake the wives and settle for this type of relationship. Um, and I mean, we even with like countries like Pakistan, where you think that, being a Muslim country and all that, they would not do these types of things, but they have societies in there where they do similar things. For example, they even have wives, and then they have the wives, and then they have special people like that, which they have relationship with, and they even give them rings and stuff, like like you give your wife a ring, for example. So you have another man and you give him a ring or something, and then they have these kind of relationships, and it's acceptable in their society, because there's so many of them that are doing it, that it's now incorporated in their society as an acceptable thing. I mean, same with, like, for example, men cheating on their wives, for example, in general, just committing adultery in general. There's so many of these men are doing it that it becomes normal thing in their society to just, oh, a man can go and cheat on their wife, for example, right? So that kind of a thing. I mean, it just says that, these people were doing it so commonly that it just became, it was just so widespread and common that they're all doing it. I mean, we can see the same with alcohol, for example, or any other thing, right? People are lying or things like that. I mean, if it becomes such a common thing that everybody does it, it becomes so widespread that it's not even a bad thing anymore, because like every person is doing it. So, but that's all. I mean, the bad thing obviously is the part that, the act is the bad thing. The main thing is that they were doing it.
Yeah, so mashallah. Also, I agree with Nudra that I used to be like that before submission. I mean, I had several people at my work were like that, and I see them very nice people, and I still see them nice people. That's not a question. And I was, I never thought that they was doing something wrong. I always thought that this is their personal choice, and I will give them their space for that matter. And so, mashallah, right now, I mean, if you can correct me on that, that I still feel accept the part that what they're doing. It's similar to, I think, idol worship. Worship is, without a question, is far worse than doing all this stuff. I mean, this is the only unforgivable sin. So if God does not enjoin you to be friend with idol worship, so that's how, because that's how you meet with them, you show your character and you encourage them. I mean, if you're not, and then maybe they'll change, and whenever you get a chance. So, do you think that still you can be friend with these people, and when you get the opportunity, because you work with them, you can, like, if there is a party, not the encouraging party, like for the like what you were saying, you had the gay party or something. I mean, not like that, but like where you can, sit with them and encourage them, that, and give them God's message and be friend with them in that sense. Would that be okay? What do you think?
Okay, maybe I'll try to answer that. So, I mean, well, so this is obviously they're disobeying God, right? So they're committing an abomination as far as God is concerned. So, and it's a gross act when you think about it. It's like somebody committing sex with an animal. I mean, how are you gonna feel about it? You're gonna say, well, this is not as bad as worshiping Jesus or thing. I mean, obviously, it's a bad thing just because it's acceptable in the society of today, doesn't mean that it's bad. And I mean, and we shouldn't. I think we shouldn't even think that. Well, this is more worse than this is not as bad as worshiping this and that. I mean, the thing is that these people, the way I would approach this or any other sin in the society, is that they're disobeying God. If someone's backbiting, for example, I'm not gonna say, well, it's okay. It's not as bad as I'd worship. That's me kind of giving it like some sort of uh, you know uh, okay, like it's okay, it's not as bad as this and that, so there's other worse things, so it's no big deal kind of a thing, that kind of sounds like that to me. So, but what you say is that, okay, this is against God and this is for God, this is an abomination, this is not abomination, idol worship is an abomination, homosexuality is an abomination, it's a bad thing, and you're against it. Now, when it comes to dealing with these people, um, obviously, um, you have to, like drinking, for example, right? It's the same thing. You have a person who's a friend or whatever, and he has a drinking problem, he's an alcoholic or he just drinks. I mean, are you gonna befriend such a person as your friend? Or are you going to befriend someone who's a believer and righteous person who invites you to be righteous like themselves, right? Or you'd befriend someone who's a cheat or who's a liar and who's doing all these satanic things. Obviously not, but you like completely write them off from the get-go? No, I mean, you would be able to have a relationship with them where if they're not fighting you because of religion or anything like that, I mean, you can be equitable towards them in that sense, right? You just like have a normal, you know, dialogue with them. You can have a civil dialogue with them, but you're not going to be their friend. You're not going to be close to them and be choose this person as your friend and, invite them to your house, every day or every weekend and do things, like you do with someone that is really close to you, right? But you would obviously, keep a relationship where you can at least talk to them if they come and share something with you, you can talk to them and give them advice, but that holds true for anybody who's not fighting you because of religion. You keep a normal civil um, relationship in that sense, and if it ever comes to a point where you can advise them and show them the message and give them the truth, that's what you do, right? I mean, that's how I look at it. uh, but I don't. But obviously, when you see people like that, you. I mean, I stay away from that. Whether it's homosexuality or any types of other types of sin, right? We don't, as submitters, we want to be close to people that we want to be like. We don't want these because like any type of bad company that you become a part of, eventually you start to become like them in that sense, so you keep your distance from them in that way. But it's not like, well, you see someone who is gay, like if they talk to you about something, like you can talk to them or anything like that. There's no such thing. Yeah, if somebody's talking to you, I mean, you talk to them, but you don't go out of your way to be nice to them and be friends with them in that way. But yeah, I mean, there can be people that could have many good things, good qualities, and they could be doing bad things, but doesn't mean that those good qualities are not there. I mean, those good qualities are there, but you see the bad qualities, the bad things that they're doing, and when you get an opportunity where you're put in a position, then you tell them that what they're doing is wrong and you don't approve of it. Does that make them a bad person for doing bad things? Yes. Can I say they're good people? No. If they're following abominations of the devil, I mean, I don't call them good people. I call them people who are following the devil. I mean, you can be nice and loving, but hypocrites are, people that we read about in today's study, and they are the people who are the worst of the worst, you know, of the worst. I mean, they're worse than homosexuals, for example. But we don't go and we don't befriend them. I mean, they can be very kind and loving people, but does that mean they're not going to go to the worst pit of hell? They will.
Yeah, it really depends on, like, I think to be in in case of homosexuality, this is a topic. They are very vicious people. Actually, they look nice, but if you talk to them about this, oh boy, I have seen
Hmm.
very wicked people. They are very wicked people. I used to live. Um, One of my apartment was in hard downtown once, and it was literally in Gayville, literally surrounded. And the parade would start from there, not like a block away from my home. And they are very non-monogamous. They are into so
Hmm.
many vices that you cannot believe it. It's
Hmm.
all about sin. And they, if you talk to them, oh my goodness, some of them, their apparent thing is like, obviously they have taken away the word even gay. Oh, we're always happy, we're peaceful people. They're not. They are vicious like anything if you talk to them about this issue. So rather keeping distance from them, and if they ever they discuss this issue, then there is a time that we can talk about that. The God, I bring God in it, but that makes it very heavy statement. I say God does not like it. God does not approve it. So first thing is that obviously they're liars when they say, "Oh, we are religious people." Popes and all of them to increase their numbers are encouraging them to come and have your weddings here. You know, so it's very hard to talk to them about any of these things rather than say, this is a wrong thing by in God's eyes. And then they just look at you like, what are you talking about? But if you say, I say, and they're ready to fight you, or they will give you so many wicked replies to shun you. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness. Oh, we minding our own business and you mind your own business, and oh, they fight you like
Right.
like
Yeah.
a loose
Yeah.
cannon, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that being friend part, Solomon. That I wouldn't be like a friend, like a regular friend, like hanging out, going to the movies or dinner or something. I'm just like in a safe distance where you have a coworker and you deal with them every day, and
Mm-hmm.
when you sit down and you give them, try to find opportunities where you can bring up the issue or something to encourage them. Okay, see, or the negatives of having this kind of call, I mean, in your society, what the negatives are and what the positives are. So try to encourage. And to me, honestly, in my friend circle, I've been telling people about the submission, because my center of my point is God, because He's the one who created me. He's the one initiated me. He gave me everything in the past life, this life, and the hereafter. So He is my utmost love. And anybody gonna idol worship, anybody's the enemy of God. I mean, I will not. I personally don't feel any loving towards that person, because, like,
Mm-hmm.
suppose, like, we love our mother. If anybody says something bad about my mother, I will not have any loving feeling for that person. I will actually be like, don't want to have anything deal with it. And in reality, if you say something bad about someone's mom, they will come and fight you. And but God is telling us, you give them the message. So I've been, these people, they just laugh it off. They just don't take heed. So personally, I don't even have to try. The love from my heart has been dropping for all these people. They don't respect God, to the point my own father. I mean, I really loved my father. I was growing up and was very close and this and that. And I've been giving my father a message and he rejected. I didn't have to try naturally. And I wonder about that, how that happened. That I have absolutely no, I mean, I used to think that when my dad was sick, I would so get worried. I would sit next to him and, what happened? Where did that love go? And I guess maybe it's controlled by God. God naturally takes the love away from your heart. If I guess maybe that's how it works. Mashallah. Yeah, I get so bored. And once in a while, if we get in a gathering somewhere, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody, because these people, they don't take my issue seriously. Why should I take their issue seriously? And I'm just yawning. I'm just sitting there when it's done, and I see that as a blessing to me, because to me, uh, the the important thing is God, and for them is the worldly life. And when they're talking about all these games and sports, I have no interest in all that. I will listen to it, but I'm yawning, mashallah.
Mashallah, though. Mohammed and I are in the same phase right now. We've been there for a while, but I don't think we're leaving anytime soon. So that's why when it comes to community gathering and you get invited, it's like you don't want to go because they have nothing in common. And it's like a lot of times you sit around and although you don't contribute to the conversation, you hear a lot of gossiping and backbiting, and you feel like, you have nowhere to run. So we're at that phase right now, too.
God takes away the love from your heart for those who are enemies of God, or disbelievers or whatever. And then God puts the love of complete strangers But they are your brethren in faith, and you wonder, where did this come from? You barely knew them few days ago or something, and that's the miracle itself.
Mm-hmm.
So love only comes in the heart of the believers from God.
Mashallah.
Subhanallah.
Yeah,
Mashallah.
very true, mashallah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree that how God controls it, He can take away the love and
Yeah, subhanallah.
uh,
Because
yeah.
this is the true love.
Mm-hmm.
And the other love, we think it is the true love, but that with time goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is like you find, wow, that is miraculous, subhanallah. That is for our assurance. Like, why would you barely know this person? And here you are, you hug them and you meet them, greet them, feel feel joy. Praise God.
I want to make a comment about verse 18. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. If you disbelieve, generations before you have also disbelieved. The sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message. So the last part of that, it says the sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message. So when you're talking to a Quranist, whether that Quranist is a submitter in the submitter group, they're saying, the way they're understanding things is the sole message, let's say Rashad was to deliver the Quran. And I think that's how they're seeing that the appendices and footnotes is other sources besides the message.
This thing, Rashad's function was to deliver the Quran, or was it Muhammad's
No, no,
function?
no, 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 no. The sole function of a messenger is to deliver the message. So Rashad
Mm,
came and he delivered the message, which is he spoke only on Quran. So the point I'm trying to raise is if it can be discussed is when a Quranist read that, or some people who are Quranists but also submitter, when they read that, that's how they're getting the point that Quran loan,
mm-hmm,
Quran loan, Quran loan, no appendices, footnotes, and
mm,
all this thing.
right. Yeah, so I think the thing there is that, the sole function of the messenger is to deliver the message, right? And Muhammad's function was to deliver the Quran, right? So he delivered the Quran. Now Rashad's function was not to deliver the Quran. The Quran was already there, but the function of any subsequent messenger after Muhammad, which being Rashad or maybe potentially another messenger in the future even, would be what? The Quran's already there, so they're not just gonna deliver any. So what are they delivering? I mean, a messenger doesn't just simply tell you the obvious that's already there. I mean, they do, but they also have a message of theirs, right? I mean, now we have the Quran, it's not going anywhere. So another messenger is not going to come and bring the same Quran to you, right? So Rashad's message is pretty obvious. Any person who truly believes he was a messenger will understand what his message was. And his message is stated in the appendices, like as to why God sent him as a messenger, right? And when he explains that what was his principal duties as a messenger of God, and then anybody who thinks he's a messenger but doesn't believe the message, I mean, that's just contradicts itself. Like, yeah, I believe you're a messenger, but I don't believe that I don't have to believe anything you're saying because what you're saying is a lie. Like for example, if you see Appendix 2, it says one of the following is a list of principal duties of God's messenger of the covenant. And if you see that, this is on page 4115. All it's doing is it's stating everything from the appendices. It says unveil. It's these are and then some people say that these are his duties, and anything that's not listed there was not his duty. But and that's also wrong because it said these are a list of principal duties, like the most important duties, But then doesn't mean that the others weren't part of his message even, because that's what principle means, is these are the most important ones. But when it says unveil and proclaim the Quran's mathematical miracle, and he says Appendix 1, and it says expose and remove two false verses from the Quran, Appendix 24. Explain the purpose of our lives while we are here, Appendix 7. Proclaim one religion for all the people and point out and purge away all the corruption afflicting Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Appendix 13, 15, 19. Proclaim zakat as a prerequisite, explain the correct method of zakat, Appendix 15. Unveil the end of the world, Appendix 25. The age of 40, Appendix 32. Jesus' death, Appendix 22. uh, explain Quran's delivery to Muhammad, Appendix 28, and so on, right? So these like 14 things, they're all everything he's put parentheses in one of the appendices. So anybody who says, well, I'm gonna listen to him, he's a messenger, but then not gonna follow any of it, they're just hypocrites. I mean, it's just as simple uh, as it gets. They're just giving lip service because they don't believe he's a messenger if they're not gonna follow. I mean, obviously, by lip service doesn't mean anything, right? Anybody who truly believes, I mean, they can play with words all they want, but at the end of the day, as far as God is concerned, did they ever believe he's a messenger if they didn't believe anything he wrote or said, whether it's in an appendix or in a video or in an audio or in person? If they believed it, they would follow through with their actions.
Masha Allah, that's how I feel too.
So,
Um, so, well, what I was going to ask. And a lot of these people who in the Semitic community are, in a way, Quranists, these are some of the people who are contemporaries also. So I always have the question, if they thought that the footnotes, appendices, and all these things are not good. In the days when Rashad was printing the Quran and he was printing all those content within the page, within the cover, why did they not eject it then?
Alas.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's people that say, don't have to listen to everything he says, but they believe he's a messenger. I mean, it just contradicts itself. Then which part do you have to listen to him? The part that they tell you to
Pick and choose
follow.
exact part they tell
Yes.
you stories.
Yeah.
They would love
Yeah.
to actually share stories, and the other people
Mhm.
gather around them to listen to those stories.
Mhm.
They have encouraged them to that's actually listening to a hadith, because you
Mhm.
can verify their personal story.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to these personal stories from one contemporary so much,
Mhm.
or all would sit down and listen. This is human
Mhm.
nature,
Mhm.
that you want to, oh, this person first-handedly met the messenger, and how fortunate I am sitting by. I'm talking about my beginning days. Satan
Mhm.
still makes it look like, oh, wow, let's fall into the
Mhm.
same trap again.
Mhm.
And then recently, the same person tried to tell that story in our community, and
Mhm.
everybody jumped at that person and said, no, 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 sorry, you cannot share this story, we cannot verify it. The person
Mhm.
was shocked.
Mhm.
Because they're so used to, that's how they want to have prominent
Mhm.
position, and like people listen to them, and we should be controlling
Yeah.
these conferences and whatnot.
Mhm.
And like, we cannot make that same mistake again and put them on pedestal. There is no way.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we see that from the verses we read. I mean, you have like, Noah's wife and his son and Lot's wife being doomed, right? Because they disbelieved. So, what does that say about where does that put contemporaries when even
Exactly.
the wife and the son is no good?
Yeah, they were contemporaries. Not contemporaries, but they were there. Yeah, I mean, that means nothing, because see, after the messenger, especially messenger of the covenant, God does not want us to look for further information because God knows the human curiosity, and Satan also knows that it's easy to idolize messengers. So listening to these stories is the cause of today's hadith and sunnah, that curiosity from one person to another and another,
Mm-hmm.
so what we need to know, what if to kill our curiosity or wanting to know something more in detail, we
Mm-hmm.
have the footnotes, we have the
Right.
subtitles, we have the appendices, we have audios, videos, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
These actually tools eliminate the possibility of creating a hadith, and that's
Mm-hmm.
all there is. Lots of material
Right.
for us, mashallah.
Yeah. And I mean, especially after the messenger is, we know from reading and watching all these videos and reading the Quran and all of his explanations, like, he stated a simple principle, like, follow what is in the Quran. If you find stuff that has no basis in the Quran, you don't follow it, end of the story. So you don't need to go to a contemporary and
Mhm.
like ask these types of things, if because he's talking even about the contemporaries in the conference where all these people were present. They were all contemporaries, but they were all in Samir's conference. And he said, in this conference you'll hear a lot of views, Satan's views going to be presented, and they'll tell you all kinds of lies. But it doesn't matter who tells you, if your principle is simple. If it's not in the Quran, you don't accept it. And so, I mean, that was the last conference actually that he was a part of, right? And he was saying that. So all these people that were all contemporaries in the conference, they can all come and say we were his contemporaries. But they were presenting, a lot of them were presenting Satan's point of view, especially there too, right? And so he was warning people that, you know, they're trying to divert you. They will try to divert you, you know, by saying things to you, and your principle is very clear. If it's not in the Quran, you don't follow it. So, that's it. We don't need anybody else coming and telling us anything about anyone, or like, people will look up to these contemporaries. If they tell them something, like, they'll say, well, I have to listen to them because they're contemporary. I mean, you're just idolizing them at that point, because you have the truth in the Quran and the message. You have the messenger telling you the truth. So why do you have to listen to a third person to verify, to hear anything that you can't verify? If it's not in the Quran, you don't follow it. That's not enough for people. It just becomes idol worship at that point.
Yeah, mashallah, very good point. I mean, how can you deny this solid proof that we have? It's not something 1400 years ago written on a piece of paper, and who knows who wrote it uh, at that point. That's why God has a system that God only sent Quran, which is verified by the miracle, and so and Himself. He's saying over and over in the Quran too that I don't say anything out of my own. What comes to me, I can give it to you. So at that time, any of this literature that is the piles of libraries that has been written, uh, who knows? There's no way to verify it. But in this
Hmm.
digital age, you can easily verify it. This is him speaking out of his mouth. Uh, and the first
Hmm.
edition of the Quran was said by him. If he didn't want it to add any of this thing, he would have said, "No, don't write my footnotes in it. Don't write my appendices. Just only the translation." But he was involved in it, and he's a messenger of the covenant. He would not let that happen. And the most authentic hadith, some of the most authentic hadith is. If you read it, is that Prophet Muhammad was saying himself that don't write whatever I say. It's written in I think Bukhari that he's him himself saying that don't write anything what I say, only write the Quran. And so the people come about against is that, okay, yeah, because Prophet, one thing, he didn't want to mix Quran with the Hadith. Okay, he wants to keep the Quran separate. Okay, and then they say the people have the reason they didn't write at that time Hadith, and it came out 200 years later, is because people have such a strong memory, they can remember everything. So that's why they didn't wrote the Hadith for 200 years. But after that, then there was time. They said, now we have to write it down. I mean, you have all kind of things. Nobody have that kind of memory. We know that. Nobody even know what I did yesterday. I mean, we have to think about what I did last week, or someone so say something, unless you write it down, you know. And they're saying that, and how would you even know that exact words Prophet Muhammad say? How would you remember? You don't have computerized brain that you record it. So these all kind of things. So to cover this authentic hadith where Prophet says that don't write whatever I say, only write Quran. They come around with so many different pathways, and you can just not argue anymore. MashaAllah, thank you.
Right, mashallah. Also, I wanted to say about my earlier, the earlier thing we were talking about was, I mean, regarding the Quran alone part, right? I mean, God, we know the Quran was, Muhammad was the final prophet, so there was going to be no more prophets, and Quran is the final scripture. Uh, but God continues to send messengers, right? But the function of the messenger is that any subsequent messenger that God sends is, since Quran is the final scripture, we're not going to get any more scriptures, but these messengers that are coming, or has come, right? His job was to um, extract new information from the Quran. The information was there. There's so much information in the Quran that we don't know even now, right? But the job of the messenger was to point out that information extracted from the Quran. Like the age of 40 was in the Quran. We know it's from the Quran. But God sent a messenger for us to extract it and point it out for us, from the Quran. The mathematical miracle was in the Quran in Surah 74, but obviously God had to send a messenger to extract that information. So these about these people, who say Quran alone, and then they don't accept it.
Mashallah, Slovan. Because uh, one of the ones that I really like was 3869, and we would have never known that, but because Messenger explained it. So, maybe for a lot of people who got the footnotes, appendices, audio, videos, they don't appreciate it immediately when they got the message. But for us, we appreciate it a lot because we got the Quran alone and we got a few articles. And all I had read about Rashad was a biography. And for 13 years, right, we didn't have any of these sources. And I remember we held to the Quran alone and we never believed in Hadith and Sunnah, but we didn't have too much more to go on, like solidify our faith, I would say. Because I remember even back then, if we went to bed late, like 2, 3 in the morning, we wouldn't wake up for Fajr. Even sometimes we go to bed 1 o'clock in the morning, we wouldn't wake up. We never understood that Salat was soul growth. It was until we got a hold of audios, videos, appendices, footnotes that were like, oh my God. So for a lot of people who got all of it together, I think they never really appreciate that information. But for us who it was, away from us for 13 years, when we got a hold of that information, we're like, oh my God, we're not practicing submission. And now that we got so much more information, our submission changed. So if anybody I can tell that information that Rashad left is very important.
Mm, so,
It's for the seeker of knowledge, right? All the knowledge is in the Quran, and God made it easy for us to understand certain thing in in the context, right? What Rashad has done is a lot of things he has put in the right context, because people had taken stuff out of context for centuries. So if there is a Quran study and he explains a verse, what he does is that he is cross-referencing it, and he is putting it in the context that makes so much sense, and right away it clicks like, oh wow, like that famous verse with Solomon was mentioning once, that the sever all ties, right? So some people have translated it that if you put trust in God, then hang yourself with a rope or something, kill yourself. I don't know, something like that. And how that, makes no sense. So little things, right? To maximize the benefit. And everything is important. If God wanted it to come to our ears, and we were meant to listen to it, that's why Rashad allowed to record it. Otherwise, he would have just said, no way, just don't ever record anything from me. Was it hard for him to say? No.
Yeah, I would say that the the footnotes and appendices and the videos and audio cleared up a lot of things for us, because, for example, we were doing charity and zakat and combined. We were doing it monthly, but we were doing combined. We never say specifically, okay, 2.5%, and the balance is charity. So there's a lot of things that we were doing, and it was not correct. And of course, had I known about insurance, we could have saved a lot of money, because for 13 years we were carrying all kind of insurance. You name the insurance, and we had it. And I think
You
some
have pet insurance?
pardon me.
You have pet insurance?
I love a pet.
I have it.
So coming back to that, I think, yeah, because you see gambling, you see gambling, you never knew that insurance fell on the gambling. And I think, recently I was thinking, and I think a lot of reasons why people may keep saying Quran alone, and they don't want to take the explanation of what Bashad is saying about the Quran, is because a lot of people do not want to give up their insurance. And there are things that Rashad would have spoke about, and maybe they don't feel comfortable giving it up. And
Hmm.
so they have to fall back on Quran alone.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, here insurance is a big thing, and these people obviously didn't accept him as a messenger fully, and they gave away part of the message that way. Like just the same way, for example, people of the previous scripture, for example, they didn't want to do the salat and stuff like that. Eventually, they lost it, right? They don't no longer, so they discarded part of the religion that they didn't like, you know, and pick and choose what commandments they want to follow. And the people did the same with the messenger, following the Quran. I mean, the messenger clearly said it's prohibited because it's gambling, but then they're like, okay, well, we follow the messenger, but insurance is not in the Quran. I mean, obviously, when the Quran was revealed 1400 years ago, there was no such thing as insurance in that sense, as the name. But obviously, gambling can happen with anything. You can gamble with anything, but you don't have specific types.
Yeah.
So
Putting a
all the
wager on something,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, these people are just basically gambling and saying
Masha
this
Allah.
gambling is on the Quran.
I mean, the Quranic prohibition comes from the gambling part, and in the larger scale, it's about not trusting in God alone. then you're committing actually idol worship too,
Mm.
in a hidden way.
Yeah.
So when they say, oh, where it is not in the Quran, from Quranic way, we can talk about putting a wager on something, and gambling. That is prohibited. But then in spiritual way, in the broad context of, or the essence of the Quran tells you that at the end of the day, we have to practice our religion so much that we put all our trust in God. So it's going to keep that fear element alive in you, and you fall into idol worship all over and over again.
Mm.
Chances are that Satan is going to steer you, keep you always fearful that if you don't have it, then what if an accident happens? You're renting a car and you don't have insurance. How would you pay? You don't have that kind of money. Stuff like
What's so
that.
funny is that as we were talking about insurance, I had this envelope in my hand that I was drawing on, like just scribbling and everything. And then I turn it over, I see it's from my car insurance.
Still, you guys are lucky. We have very expensive insurance here in Canada. My goodness.
Oh,
Oh, it's a curse. Minimum. I take minimum, which is 200 something a month minimum in Toronto.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How come you
And
guys are so expensive? If some people came from Canada and they said basic
They
liability
don't
is
know how
like
to
two,
drive,
three hundred
man. That's
dollar.
why.
yeah, basic liability.
I mean,
They
Different.
in
don't know.
here where I
Hmm.
live, it's basic liability is I pay only $50 a month for me and my wife.
They
Basic
don't know
Wow.
how to
liability.
drive. They don't know how to drive in Canada. That's why.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's why.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense.
Okay, Salman, you want to start losing some Canadian subscribers?
Like
Yeah,
one of
sorry,
my
guys.
brothers said, "Oh, you guys live in a third world country." I'm like, "What?" He lives in US, so they think you know, we live in igloos.
I
Oh
mean,
well.
here you have an insurance agent selling you a month $500 suppose car insurance, and here you have a messenger of the covenant selling you insurance for free, and God's insurance. And the insurance agent is saying that you pay us this amount of money, and if anything bad happens to you, we will take care of you. You get an accident, you get sick, we'll take care of you. And here the messenger of the covenant is saying, okay, God insurance is you don't pay anything, but nothing bad will happen to you anyway. God will prevent you from going into the accident. How about that? Free, no charge, and incident won't even happen. So which insurance is better? If we believe in the messenger of the covenant, then we will take his insurance through God. And so since some people they don't accept messenger of covenant's teaching as part of the religion, so they are barred from accepting that insurance. They are pushed away, they're kicked out of that office. Leave this office, go to the other guy who's selling you for $500 insurance. You get that insurance, you cannot take. It's not their choice, they're barred from it. I look at it that way. Masha Allah.
You know what it all comes to? It all comes to your belief, right? And God exposes the hypocrites. One way or the this is God's promise. And Salman was reading those verses today. That we don't have to be worried about who's hypocrite, who's not, because we don't have the wisdom to know the innermost thoughts or what people are and what they. We might. God says you might know through the way they talk and the way they do things, but we cannot completely say, oh, so and so is a hypocrite. But eventually, God puts them into test where they get exposed about whether they believe in God or not. It's not even the messenger, it's God Himself. So then they find loopholes to get not exposed. Try not to get exposed, so people don't think that they are not believers. Because if they were believers, God says you hear and you obey the messenger. So they come up with excuses like that. Oh, where in the Quran, this and that, and then unity. The other who support them um, in conferences and all that, they would say, "Oh, just take the insurance thing out and perfect health and wealth and happiness out, and then we have the unity." Really, unity with the hypocrites? Is that a good thing? You think that's gonna take you unity? This kind of unity will take you to heaven? And God has exposed somebody, you stay away from them. Simple as that. You be then the other verses follow. You stay harsh and stern with them, you know? So and all that. Yeah. It's they are exposed, Adam. They are
Mhm.
definitely exposed.
Yeah, this perfectly fits with verse 25. You know, he said, "You worship beside God powerless idols due to the peer pressure just to uh, preserve some friendship among you in this worldly life. But then on the day of resurrection, you will disown one another and curse one another. Your destiny is hell, wherein you cannot help one another." Masha Allah.
See, we're in the topic of insurance. When you get the minimum of coverage, it's still sometimes that minimum of coverage comes with um, rental insurance. But if you go with another company, if you go with other companies, the minimum of insurance may not come with rental insurance. However, if you do car rental, um, you cannot drive without insurance. So in that way, is it better that with your minimum insurance, you take the insurances for car rental for the year, because the police officers, not if they stop you, you cannot be driving a car without insurance. So if a rental car, I'm talking about rental cars. If you have a rental car, and do you just with your minimum coverage just include the car rental for the year? So at least if the police stops you, you do have insurance.
I
Yeah.
I, I
Go
don't
ahead.
understand that. Sorry.
So
Yeah, I don't get it.
I think let me try to. I think I was in a sort of similar situation. See, minimum requirement is required. We have to have liability. That's the minimum. But some insurance company offers you some extra stuff. And if I was thinking that if though two different companies are offering me same amount of money, like $50 a month, but one is offering me a free rental, and if I go towards free rental, that what if something happened, I have a car, then I'm already losing my trust in God. I'm already thinking that if something can go wrong, then I was applying for insurance, and just $4 more per month, they would increase my insurance benefit to, let me see how many, 10 times more. Now I'm thinking, oh, only $4 more, and then I'm gonna get 10 times more coverage. Then I'll start thinking, am I already predicting that something will happen? I'm only getting this insurance just for the law, the
Hmm.
minimum, and I didn't take that $4. I didn't save that $4. I mean, I saved that $4, and I take the minimum. I didn't want it 10 times because my goal was that I am putting my trust in God. Nothing bad will happen for sure. Why
Hmm.
I wouldn't go for 10 times more? That was my understanding. Unless you have a different question, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
the
Yeah, I
question,
mean, we just have to
No, I
take
got it.
what's
the
Yeah.
necessary.
question is, right? When you have a car, some of your insurance will have built in with the minimum insurance. You'll still have built-in rental. The way I understood it, maybe I understood wrong. However, there are some insurance company that would tell you the minimum, but you would not get car rental. But if you rent a car often and you're driving a rental car often, you have to have rental car insurance, because if the police stop you, you have to have some sort of insurance.
No, no, the insurance is not on the cars, it's on the driver.
It's not illegal to not have rental
Yeah.
car insurance.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
police
You have
never
to,
cares about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you have to have insurance on you as a driver, right? So let's say you have insurance. Can you drive your friend's car, or are you gonna need insurance? If you get pulled over, you don't need to show an insurance card with your friend's car insurance with his, car covered under your name. You just have to say, no, I have insurance, and then you could be driving any car, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're violating the law.
And it's
So
in case of accident,
yeah,
the police
yeah.
will ask you, do you have insurance? So the liability, if we because the liability isn't there or nothing, then the entire liability comes to you. Even though
Mm,
rental companies are insured, actually, they themselves are insured for all those cars in case something happens. But they also want you to have, you
mm-hmm,
know.
Okay.
So, but if it is somebody else's fault, obviously you wouldn't pay. So we have to trust God that all bad, because the thing is, no matter what, if something bad, because God says all bad comes from you. If we are even loaded with insurance, let's say, right? We took the car rented and we have all the insurance. What if an accident happens and somebody loses a limb? Any kind of money can replace that. That's the thing. So we put all our trust in God and say, and God will suffices as like this person has put their trust in me. I'm gonna protect them. So
Mhm.
if and if something is meant to happen, if not with the car, with something else will happen. If we are supposed to lose a certain amount of money in a monetary way, that's would be inevitable. But it will be double sword. First, we didn't put trust in God. We took the insurance, then the mishap still happened, and now what?
So when you rent a car, you don't have to have rental insurance.
No, it's a
Mm.
choice.
It's
Some small company makes it mandatory.
hmm
Big companies like Budget and them, they you just sign a waiver that I decline the mandatory insurance. I have went such long distance, like from Vancouver to Tucson. I used to drive, go to conferences, zero insurance, car loaded with kids. I mean, vans. I would rent vans at
hmm
that time. Yeah,
hmm
and yeah, Masha Allah, never.
Okay. Because I actually always thought that that was mandatory, that if the police stop you, you have a rental car, you have to show them some sort of insurance.
Oh no, 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 absolutely not. They ask you for papers. They give you a ticket if you're speeding. I got many tickets. Almost 15 states of US I owe tickets. And that's my stupidity. Why shouldn't I be a law abiding citizen? Yeah, Canadians are bad drivers, Salama. Oh, most wanted drivers in United States. Oh my goodness. Once in Nevada, they have very high speed limit, very good roads and everything. We were coming back from a conference. And I was like literally flying on 90 in a van, minivan. And then I see from distance lights. The guy must be thinking. And I used to be a foster parent at that time, and I had foster little kids with me. And he came to, and I started to slow down and slow down. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble already. And when he came and he said, oh, ma'am, do you know at what speed you were going? I said, not really. He goes, 90. I said, oh my God. I thought it was um, Canadian kilometers in 90. And anyway, I and he said, "You have little kids in this?" Anyway, that was a good learning lesson. And after that, I'm like, I seriously thought about not to be flying like that anymore. Anyway, mashallah, a really great study. I have to actually go to another city right now, and God bless you all, mashallah.
Mashallah.
Until next study, God willing.
God
Assalamu
bless you
alaikum.
too. So,
Yeah.
before we end, do you guys know who's next teaching? I think it's who is it Adam or Nusrat?
Adam.
Yeah, I'll do it,
Okay,
inshallah. Unless somebody
okay,
else wants to, new person wants to do it.
It's your turn though, but if you
Yeah.
can do, then somebody should do it.
No, no, inshallah I'll do it, but unless some new person want to do it, that's no problem.
Where is the new person?
Yeah, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah,
okay, cool,
mashallah.
cool.
Assalamu alaikum all.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
Thank you
God
guys for
bless.
joining
God
us.
bless you all.
God
God
bless you.
bless
I
you.
gotta take off too. So,
Our
inshallah.
next study is going to be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God willing, we'll see you guys then. Assalamu alaikum.
So.